Come with me to a land of pain and reward. Come with me, and I will show you the land of Lorne and Deathlord. Yeah, that's the stuff right there. Oh yeah. I am not well practiced at video editing, which I'm sure you can easily tell. So I am hoping you will have some patience with my simple video production here of this labor of love for the crown jewel of my personal video game journey. Now let's get into it. Welcome to Deathlord, released by Electronic Arts in 1987, made by Al Escudero and David Wong. Now, this game isn't very well known, and for those of us that do know this game, the small population of us that do, we knew this game achieved a nearly legendary status as being one of the most difficult and sadistic CRPGs of all time. Deathlord has a number of features that made gameplay difficult. And yes, I'm leaving the best one for last. And because I don't want this to be filled with spoilers, something similar to a walkthrough, I'm going to be vague in some of my descriptions. The manual itself on the very last 2 pages gives you vague clues and what it calls Emperor's tips as well. First of all is the overarching quest itself. Now, in the beginning of the manual, there is something called the Emperor's Exhortation, where he tells you his troubles and offers you a reward. Pretty typical stuff nowadays for a CRPG. But then it does something not very typical at all. Following this message from the Emperor, the Deathlord himself has written a passage for you. Well, me. Us. I won't read the Emperor's message, but I will read for you the letter from the Deathlord himself.
Stupid adventurers, your weak party is not enough to stop even my most slack-spined drone. I would encourage you to stay in the security of your little homes, but I thrive on misery and dread. Your futile quest to stop me is sure to yield just that. Even if you defeat my lowly pawn, you must still answer to me, face to face. Should you insist on pursuing this fatal course, I offer these clues. 7 words, 6 items, and your ineptitude prevent us from meeting. Go now, and prepare to embrace your emperor in my hell.
Now, if that's not an invite, I don't know what is. And in order to find these words and items, you have to both find specific dungeons and or locate certain people. And there are many more settlements and dungeon locations than there are items you need. 128 dungeon levels to be exact. And the certain townsfolk you need to find are specifically hidden in out-of-the-way areas in certain locations. And these townsfolk are scattered in locations all across the map. To help you out with this, the manual tells you this. Some of the folks with the key information are really shy. Be sure to look in odd corners for these wallflowers. This aspect of gameplay has been a negative point of contention for a lot of people. But to me, it always felt so rewarding to find some random citizen in some unknown corner of a settlement, as though my exploration was really paying off. The manual also encourages you to take down notes of what you have discovered, and the manual says, try committing it to memory and you may soon forget the game completing clue. So it tried to help you, but not give you the entire secret. The second aspect that made this game as hard as it was is that the map is huge. The map you're given in the box sleeve is labeled as a partial map, And believe me, the distances on it are very much not reliable. There are 16 continents. The programmers managed to put more content on the one double-sided scenario disc than Knights of Legend or Ultima 5 had on 4 double-sided discs. And I think they might have had more discs than that. So you have your work cut out for you. And most maps were kind of centrally localized. Not the same with Deathlord. I will tell you no more. The manual encourages you to make your own maps, which is definitely a lost art nowadays. I know I made a map of all the continents, or at least I think it was all of them. I can't find my map that I made, but I definitely mapped it out on graph paper, so I had a much easier time navigating once I made that. And this was kind of par for the course for a lot of games back then, and it was fun as well. It felt like I was like an explorer in the game. I was a stranger in a strange land. I loved it. The game is full of traps, pit traps, teleport traps, others. And the manual tells you about these things, but nothing can prepare you for the sadistic nature of some of these. No more shall I tell. The day-night cycle. This was the first game I ever encountered with this, besides playing the Atari game called Haunted House. Adventuring outdoors, you could see the sun and moon cycle, and as the day passed, it would get darker and darker and darker, and eventually so dark you couldn't see anything around you. If you lit a torch, you could see one square around, which was very helpful. Yet again, another aspect of gameplay that made things quite frustrating, but to me, it added a level of realism I hadn't encountered before, and so it made the game feel more real to me. And so yet again, this negative is a positive for me. Party inventory was cantankerous and took some getting used to, and it took me a bit, but I got it eventually. Each party member can hold one melee weapon, one missile weapon, one armor, one shield, one miscellaneous armor, one miscellaneous item like a lockpick or holy symbol, and one scroll, and that's it. And if a character found an item that they were already wearing, you had to either accept that item, which would exchange your current one for that new one, and you would drop the old one forever. Or you could refuse accepting the new item, and it would drop forever as well. And as with most of the negatives in this game, I thought of this as a strength. It seemed to me like a natural version of encumbrance built into the game, as opposed to having a backpack full of items that you had to sort through regularly, and many times that felt like a sort of bureaucratic load of red tape work for me. And so it took away time from adventuring in the game itself. My back 3 characters end up finding random missile weapons and armors they can't wear or use, and they sell those from time to time. So to me, that's a nice little compromise. Another inventory aspect that added to the difficulty of the game was gold. Each character could hold 10,000 gold pieces, and that was it. And if that character was the leader of the party and you found gold, and that character already had 10,000 gold, whatever gold you found was lost forever. So you had to keep track of how much gold each party member had and make sure you had one selected as the party leader to be finding gold so it wouldn't disappear altogether. This is something that a lot of folks didn't like, but yet again, I loved it because it felt real to me. Do you know how much 10,000 gold pieces weighs? I did the math. 10,000 quarters weighs 125 pounds. 10,000 gold sovereigns weighs 178 pounds. 10,000 American Gold Eagle 33-gram coins weighs 728 pounds. So even though this was something you had to keep track of or you'd lose gold, it was nice because it felt like another aspect of encumbrance to me, giving it a more realistic feel to it, so I enjoyed this as well. Another aspect of gameplay that caught players unawares, and keep in mind that we were all basically teenagers in the late 1980s playing this game, is that the races, classes, equipment, and spells were all written as English versions of Japanese words. So you didn't play a paladin, you played a kishi. You didn't play a barbarian, you played a yabanjin. And us kids, if we didn't understand the game, we were less apt to play it. So that was another stumbling block in its past. And you've heard it before, but I loved this aspect. I'm 51 years old, and I've played Dungeons & Dragons since 1980. And I've also played a little bit of Oriental Adventures as well. So I already had a background in these kinds of words and equipment, so it was easy for me to kind of get into the game. But my experience was not most everyone else's. Secret doors and illusory walls. Gah! Jeez. Deathlord has a pretty sinister secret door and illusory wall mechanic. You have to find them. I know that sounds pretty easy, but maybe it's easier said than done. There are a number of CRPGs out there where you can walk into an area and the graphics tell you that some part of it is going to need your attention. It might take you some time to develop the ability to see these things, but once you've got it, you've got it. This mechanic does not exist within Deathlord. The secret doors and illusory walls in Deathlord look exactly like the terrain that they're in, so you can't see them. You've got to find them. And like Shakespeare said, herein lies the rub. Take, for example, this corridor that my troll Senshi is currently standing in. Where's the secret door? Where is it? I'll give you a hint. You don't know where it is. I know there's a secret door in this hallway, in this corridor. I know exactly where it is. But there's no defining characteristic of the graphic of the secret door. You can't know where it is in this hallway just by looking. You have to actively search. And let's search. I know where it is. It's right here. Search K to east. There. Well, that's nice. That's great. That took one time. It's not a random chance. I think it's like a 33% chance, roughly. I'm not sure of the exact mechanic, but it's taken me to find this door, which is a pretty easy door to find. I've searched for it 5 times in a row. So you can imagine how frustrating that can be when you are looking for a door you know is there and you keep not finding it. Or you know how daunting a task it can be when you are looking for secret doors and you don't know if there are any in the area that you're looking in, but you also know that it's a random or a slim chance of finding it. So it's tough, and I love it because it feels real to me. I keep saying that, but some games you find secret doors by searching for it one time, and that's it. Other games, you can see that the graphic is different than everything else around it, and so you know something about that area requires your attention. Not so with Deathlord. I love it. And it's the same thing for illusory walls. You tell me, where's the illusionary wall in this room? Go ahead. I know exactly where it is. Just like with secret doors, illusory walls look exactly the same as everything else. These walls are stone. This is like an underground cave that I'm in, an underground dungeon. And just like the secret doors in the game, the illusory walls look exactly like the walls of the dungeon you're in. So it's slightly different than secret doors, but it's still something that can compound the difficulty. So the only way to find secret illusory walls is by pushing into them. And to me, it felt like I was an adventurer looking around and getting stumped by it. It would have been less rewarding to me if I could have found them easier. Like if this stone wall here looked slightly different than everything else around it. Kind of like old cartoon graphics, where whatever was the background had the same kind of color to it, the look to it, but something that was going to move looked a little brighter or stood out some. But as is the case, you can't tell if that stone wall here is illusory or not. And I love this mechanic because it makes you have to earn those secret doors and illusory walls. And just to let you know how difficult it is to find all these secret doors and illusory walls, on the beginning continent of Kodan, I found an illusory wall that I hadn't found in 29 years. And it basically doubled the size of a dungeon that I had gone in, and I'd missed it the entire time. So even 30 years later, I'm finding things that I had missed on the starting continent. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the number one reason why this game is considered to be legendarily one of the most difficult CRPGs of all time. The modern terminology nowadays for this mechanic that made this game so difficult is permadeath. This mechanic was created by a computer game called Rogue in 1980. And while this mechanic is very well known today, when this game came out in 1987, it was not. At least not to me. There were other computer games that did have this mechanic in it or something similar, like Bard's Tale or Wizardry, but I only got Bard's Tale after this game, and I never played Wizardry. So I was beautifully fertile, untouched ground for Deathlord to be spoil. Whenever you had a character die in the game, whether it was from a trap or combat or smashing a portcullis to death, the game would save your progress immediately right then and there. And just like Kevin Spacey's character says in the film Margin Call, no swaps. The game had one save slot. Please allow that to sink in. Nowadays, games have many save game slots, so you can go somewhere difficult, test the waters, see how you feel about it, and then refine your strategy. Not so with Deathlord. So even if you saved your progress right before some big bad battle or some situation you knew was going to be really tough, if one of your characters died, that was your new save game slot. You do not know the pain and the horror when one of your characters died and was written as slain in the combat reader, and then the disk drive lights up and makes a noise. And then, as any self-effacing player would do, you restart your game and reload your save. And there you are all over again, stuck in the bottom of some dungeon, and your character is still dead, and your heart breaks and your mind explodes. I can't stress enough that you should try to put yourselves in the mindset of the year 1987. There's no internet. Google is still a number and not a search engine. I wouldn't encounter my first cell phone until 11 years after this time. The only way that you could find out about how games worked was by talking to your friends. Or certain computer and gaming publications might be available in your area to provide hints. But if none of your friends knew about this game, like mine didn't, and you didn't learn about it in a computer magazine, like I did not, you were completely in the dark. So, you are completely in the dark and alone with the hardest computer game you've ever played. If you're wondering why this game was as difficult as it was, I found a guide and walkthrough by someone named Fraterisis, and he found an interview with the developers, and part of an excerpt reads like this. My favorite part, though, is the bit where the developer admits that the game is basically much harder than he intended. The story goes that there was a QA team working on the project that had played through the game multiple times, so he kept increasing the difficulty in order to make their jobs more interesting. So that's why. It's very possible the game would not have been as difficult as it was if not for a last-minute decision on the part of Electronic Arts. The game had been worked on for about a year and a half with a Norse, Teutonic, Viking theme. But then, 5 weeks before the game was going to be released, Electronic Arts told the developers they wanted it changed to a Japanese theme. Al Escudero was not happy with this and said it felt like a hack when he was doing it. He wished he'd had more time to really flesh out the Japanese mythos and culture and address other aspects of the game, but there just wasn't time. I love this game. Like I've said, it's my favorite CRPG of all time. And now that I have finally finished this video depicting what made this game so difficult, I can finally start my Let's Play and finally beat this game, as it's been 37 years since it was released, and I have not yet done that. There is a YouTube channel called The Lost Sectors with Matt and Chris. They have some great Let's Plays of old games from my era that I love. And so if you want to take a walk down memory lane, I can't encourage you enough to go check out Matt and Chris at The Lost Sectors. They have a great rapport together and make a great gaming dynamic duo. And with this game here, with Deathlord, I'm going to say something similar to what Chris said. The only regret that I will have is that once I have finally played and beaten Deathlord, there will be no more Deathlord. If you are wanting to go on a deep dive and play this beautifully difficult game from 1987, you're either going to have to find a functioning Apple II computer and functioning discs, and you can't borrow mine, and you can play it that way, or what you can do is what I'm doing. This is the Apple Win emulator, made in 1994, and you can run old Apple II software on it. And you can also go to Abandonware and download the game files. And so that's one way to play this game from way back in yesteryear. Just keep in mind that it can be difficult knowing how to download and, more importantly, install these emulators on your computer. And there can be some sites that are not reputable, so you have to be careful as well, too. Downloading these emulators and, more importantly, installing them can be a difficult thing. I should know because I'm a 51-year-old Luddite and I've had a bear of a time getting some of these to work on my computer. But this is at least one way that you can play this old game on your computer and still enjoy some difficulty of yesteryear. But, and hear me out, if you want to play this game, and if you don't want to go to the trouble of downloading an emulator and installing it, and also downloading the software files for the game, and you also don't want to play the game because it's as difficult as my video shows you, there is a solution for you. What you can do is go here. This is rickles.itch.io, and the programmer Rickles has made what he has here, Deathlord Relorded. And it's a version he released in 2022, I believe. And he's made a number of quality of life improvements in the game that kind of take the edge off of it and still a lot of fun to play. If you don't want to go play the old original version, I highly recommend you go check this out at rickles.itch.io. It's a great game and it's a faithful reproduction, just with some improvements to make it more accessible to modern players. So check it out. If you made it this far, I commend you and thank you. This is obviously a labor of love on my part, and it has made me a little long-winded. And it may not mean a lot to you, but it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe to my channel. It's a very small thing you can do, and it helps support me and helps grow my channel. So I would love it if you would, and maybe comment down below or like or even share. I also have a Patreon link in my description of this video so you can help support the channel there as well. I want to give a few thank yous to people that helped me along the way. First, to my brother for getting me this microphone right here, so now, as opposed to me sounding like a webcam, I sound like Shadow Stevens. So thank you so much. Secondly, to a person named JhonSF. That's his handle name on his online store on the Mercari platform. He sold me this physical copy of the game, which I haven't had in a long time. I used to have 2 full copies of the game, but they've long been lost to the sands of time. So JhonSF, thank you so much. I now have it back in my library. And thirdly, I want to thank a YouTube channel called The Retro Vault. The person's handle name on the channel is Copper, and he has numerous videos of old games from the 90s and earlier on the DOS and Amiga platforms. You should check his channel out. He has lots of great videos, and it's him that inspired me to make this more in-depth video of my personal favorite CRPG of all time. And so, Copper, thank you. Thank you so much, and I hope to hear about your experiences in the land of Lorne and the world of Deathlord. Okay. Here we go. Here we go. God. God. Damn it.